Okay, in today's session, before we try to understand any of the basic concepts of Java or any of the core, fundamental, advanced, any concepts, we'd like to see like what are the basic industry standards, or we will try to understand what exactly happens in an industry and how we try to develop applications, which means like on a technical perspective, we call it as software development life cycle, which means how exactly all these applications or how all these softwares are being developed and what are the different methodologies that they follow or what are the different steps that they follow in building software applications. This is the main thing that we'll be covering here in today's class. So from tomorrow onwards, we'll be starting the actual concepts of Java, which is like as per the syllabus, the core concepts and all those things. But for today, let's understand the industry basics. Okay. The first thing, before you go into this, we go into the concepts of SDLC. This is the main agenda for today's class. SDLC. SDLC stands for Software Development Life Cycle. So in this software development life cycle, we try to understand like how the software applications are developed, okay, or what are the steps which are involved in the development. But before we understand that, let's take a simple example, try to correlate it with a simple example and understand it. Okay, not only this scenario team, whatever topic or whatever concept that you want to learn, just make sure that you try to understand the concepts in the form of a short stories where you can remember them or you can easily correlate them in future even if you forget it. Okay, so let's start understanding the problem. The first thing, let us assume that uh, on a weekday you want to go to your office. Okay, so if you want to go to your office, you need to think that okay, I need to reach my office at 9 o'clock by 9. So the first thing that comes to your mind is like if suppose you are running out of time, you think that okay, let me take a route which is shortest or which has less traffic, or if you have a lot of time, you say that okay, for today let me avoid the road with lot of tolls, let me take a different route so that I can go to office without toll road, so that since I have a lot of time. Okay. Oh, Praveen, you cannot hear me. Maybe you need to check your connection at your end. Try to re-log in back or check your audio connections once. Okay. So continuing with the class. Uh, so okay. Now let us assume that for going to your office from destination A to destination B, okay, from your office, from your home to your office, you might have different routes. One which is the shortest distance, and the one which has tolls, and the one which does not have tolls, and the one which is like lesser traffic, and the one which has very heavy traffic. Okay, so there are different scenarios where you try to pick each one of the roads at different points of time, right? When you have when you don't have a time, which route do you take? When you have a lot of time, which route do you take? When you want to go on a toll road without any traffic, how do you take it? Or if you want to avoid a road which has a lot of accidents or traffic jams, how do you decide? Which means you have different options to choose for going to your office, right? So this shows like what are the steps that you take, or what is the procedure that you follow to go to your office. Is it the shortest distance, or is it the road with less traffic, or is it the road with the longest route, or whatever? Let's say that you want to enjoy your ride. You bought a new car and you want to enjoy your ride. So you say that, well, let me take a route which has the longest distance so that I can enjoy my ride, whatever reason might be. Okay. So it depends on totally the scenario at which or the timings which you want to choose based on that specific day or conditions, right? The same is the case with the software development also. So when I say the software development, you can consider as all the basic applications out there in the network or on the internet are all considered as some software applications which are developed in different programming languages. Okay, so whatever we try to understand today, like SDLC, is not only for Java applications. It holds good for any software application which is developed on or which can be developed on any platform out there. Okay, so this is nothing related with Java. This is just some industry basics or industry standards that we are trying to understand here. Okay, now SDLC, as you already saw, stands for Software Development Lifecycle. So in this software development lifecycle, the first thing that we understand here is we'll take two different scenarios and we'll try to understand two different methodologies in this current session. Okay, so under SDLC, if you see, there are two famous methodologies, software development lifecycle methodologies. There are two methodologies which are followed across industry. The first one is called as waterfall methodology, and the second one is called as agile methodology. So which process you choose to build or to develop your software totally depends on the type of scenario. Means it has a lot of scenarios. We'll try to understand one by one and we'll try to understand the differences, why people choose waterfall or why people choose agile or one over the other. Okay, so let's start with, yeah, SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle. So that is the agenda for today's class, where we try to see how exactly the softwares in the current industry are being developed or they are being, yeah, created or developed. So under SDLC, there are two methodologies that you take, that you follow, like either a waterfall methodology or agile methodology. Okay, so consider this SDLC as something like creating an application from the scratch or maintaining it or whatever. So for doing that, there are two procedures that you can follow, either the first one or the second one. So let's start understanding one by one. So let's take or let's understand waterfall methodology. So in waterfall methodology, there are certain steps that needs to be followed or certain pre-defined standard steps that you need to understand. Right? If you see the waterfall methodology, in the waterfall methodology, there are some steps which are like requirement phase, design phase, development phase, testing phase, deployment phase, and maintenance phase. Okay, let's start understanding. Let's start from the requirement phase and understand what exactly each phase does. Okay, so the first one which we saw is like requirements. So before we understand this requirements phase, one more simple example. Okay, so I will try to explain waterfall and agile with two different examples. Agile with a scenario of developing an application for Chase Bank, and waterfall with developing an application for Bank of America. Okay, so let us assume that the Bank of America, okay, banking company, they come or they approach company X, which is something like a software development company. They approach company X and say that, hey, we need an application where our users can log in to an online banking system and can manage their transactions and can see all the income deposits, or they can do a funds transfer. Basically, Bank of America says that I need an online banking application and it gives all the requirements. So when Bank of America approaches company X for doing this, Let us assume that company X says that, hey, we are going to follow a waterfall methodology. Okay. Ideally, company X will not say that to Bank of America, but I'm just in general telling that. Let us say that company X follows a waterfall methodology. Now, since company X is following waterfall methodology, and whatever numbers or any examples that I give are just for your understanding purpose, they vary in real-time projects. Okay. So let us say that the company X says that, hey, Bank of America, we will take 12 months to complete the project, which means the entire online project, like a login, maintaining the transactions, funds transfer, e-bills, bill pay, all these things. Okay. So the Bank of America says that, okay, that's fine. And they start giving the requirements. So in the requirements phase, the company X has some people or a team of people. They are called as business analysts. Okay, business analyst. So the main purpose of a business analyst, what they do is they try to interact with the end client like Bank of America, and they try to get all the requirements. So when I say all the requirements, it's like they try to understand, okay, you need a login page, how exactly it needs to look like, or means what are the features basically they need, like if do they need a single sign on, or do they need a sign on process where they it must have a username in the first page, and once they click on uh, enter or login, it needs to go to a second page where in that page it needs to require a password, which means like they take all the requirements from the end client, how exactly or what are the basic requirements. They might say that I need an option for the users to track their transactions via phone, or they need an option like paying the bill online, bill pay, and all those things. So in the first phase, or in the requirements phase, the business analyst will take or will gather all the information from the Bank of America or the end client. So now, once the business requirements phase is done, which means once all the requirements are gathered, then the second phase starts, which is nothing but a design phase. So the design phase is the one where the architects come into picture, architects and team leads kind of stuff. So whenever I say an architect is someone who tries to define or design how exactly the application is going to look like internally. So when I say internally, at a functional perspective, like means they don't basically design how the screens look like or what is the color of the screen. They don't do that, architects. They basically try to see what are the technologies that we need to use, what are the servers that we need to use, what are the different types of environments that we need to use, and what is the framework and how the structure of the framework internally exists. All these things are decided by the architects, which means that they basically say like these are all the different classes which might be present in our application, and this is the flow from end to end, a single flow. Like that, they try to define or design the project. So at a high level, if you want to understand the role of an architect, he tries to define the basic structure or a layout of the project along with the different kinds of environments that we are going to use. Okay, so what are those frameworks and what are those servers, environments, and all we will see later. But at a high level, maybe you can consider it as if you are familiar with it, you might consider it as frameworks like a Struts framework, Spring framework, web services, Hibernate, like the different frameworks, and what are the different combinations of framework that we can use. That is what is decided by the architects. Okay. Now, so once the design phase is done, the next phase that we go into is the development phase. The development phase. In the development phase, basically, it's the role of a developer. It is the role of a developer to understand the requirements and say, basically, the business analyst will be creating something called as high level design documents. Okay. and the architects will take those documents and will try to create detailed level design documents. If there are different technical terms that are given to these documents, so these documents which are created by the business analyst will be at a high level, saying that okay, this is the requirement, this is how it should look like, which means like I need to have a login page, then once I click on login I need to go to my login page. That is how it says at a high level. But at an architect, he says that okay, if it is a login page, let's use some framework called Spring Security, okay, and let's define different classes for them at a high level. Or when I say classes, there are certain UML diagrams which will be created which show that when an actor means a user, when a user comes into our application, how exactly the user interaction goes. Like when the user clicks on login, where exactly the user must be redirected, if he is a valid user, if he is an invalid. Yes, all these things will be designed by the architects and will be placed in the detailed level design documents. Now, the developer takes the high level design documents and the detail level design documents, try to understand the application requirements and will start coding for it, which means like as a developer you start writing some piece of code. Okay, so once the development phase is done, then we go into the testing phase. So the testing phase is the one in which the QA, the quality analyst team, comes into picture, where the quality analyst team tries to check how well the application is performing against the business requirements. Okay, so let us say that in the business requirements, the business requirement might say something like in the login page the users must access the login page with a certain URL. They will try to see if that URL is given, is the login page coming. Okay, then in the login username and password fields, do we need to allow special characters, or what is the maximum size or the limit that needs to be allowed in those text boxes. Like this, there might be different business requirements for Bank of America which are defined by the business analyst. So the quality analyst team will try to cross check or verify whether the application developed by the development team or the developers is in sync with the business analyst requirements or not, basically. Okay, so once the testing phase is done and once the team confirms that all the applications or all the features which are defined by Bank of America are being developed, tested, and they are valid and working fine, and once they get a sign off from the business analyst also, which means that why, because since business analyst is the one who gets all the requirements, finally they go and check the application saying that okay, is everything in sync with the requirements or not. If that is the case, then we will move into the next phase called deployment phase. So in the deployment phase, generally it will be like sometimes architects will be there, sometimes developers will be there, or in general we will be having some infrastructure team where the infrastructure team will be responsible for deploying the applications into different environments or different servers. Basically, the deployment team will get some instructions from the developers or QA or architects based on how to deploy the applications or what is the exact code that needs to be deployed. So once the infrastructure team gets all these requirements, then the deployment will happen in the real-time production environment. And once that is done, the next thing is the maintenance phase. So in the maintenance phase, basically the business analyst team will try to get more requirements and the developer will try to develop them and the QA will try to test them and the infrastructure team will try to redeploy them. Okay, so these are the basic steps which are defined in a waterfall methodology, which means when people created this methodology, they told that okay, these are the steps that you need to follow in order to achieve certain goal. So what are all those steps? Requirements phase, design phase, development phase, testing phase, deployment phase, and maintenance phase. Okay, now in this scenario, the other thing that we need to understand here is waterfall methodology is linear. Okay, when I say linear, it means the requirements phase is the first phase. So any consecutive phases or any next phase, if I say like design phase, the design phase must be started only after the requirements phase is completely completed. Okay, the same is the case. The development phase needs to be started only after the design phase is completely completed. Okay, but uh, in general, the development and testing phases sometimes go hand in hand, which means like as and when I start developing and creating some modules, I will give it, push it to the testing team, where the testing team goes ahead and tests it and all those scenarios. Then once development and testing is all done, then sometimes there people call it as there will be a phase also called as verification phase. Okay, so in the verification phase, what exactly happens is the business analyst team will cross check whether the app which is developed and tested by the QA and the developers is in sync with the business requirements or not. So that's what the verification is done by the business analyst. And once they say that the verification is well and good, then it goes for the deployment phase. So in the deployment phase, the app is deployed, and once this is completed, then we go into the maintenance phase. So that in the maintenance phase, let us assume that all these 12 months, if I say like I'm trying to launch a product into the market, when it goes to the real-time environment, there will be definitely some issues which might be popping up because of some data issues, or because of some inconsistency in the development that we do, or because of lack of poor coding standards, a lot of things, or maintenance issues. So all those issues will be redeployed or redone in the maintenance phase. Or any new enhancements, Bank of America says that, hey, whatever app you've developed is good, why don't you add more features like online mobile application features or mobile banking features? Then you will do it in a kind of a next phases like a maintenance phase or whatever. Okay, so this is how an application is developed by company X for the end client Bank of America in 12-month span, and by the end of 12 months the application is released and will be available for the end user. So when I say 12-month span, let us assume that the application development starts at Jan 2015 and ends at Jan 2016. Okay, so by Jan mid or Jan end or Feb, just an example that I'm giving. But let us assume that by Feb, okay, by Feb 1st, the application will be ready. When Feb 1st, 2016, by that time, the application will be ready and the people can log into Bank of America application and can use all the features. Okay, any questions or any doubts in this waterfall methodology? Linear phase means one after the other. Each, see, this is one phase, requirements phase, design phase, development phase. So each phase must be completed in order to start the next phase. So one after the other. So linear. Okay. Yeah. Very good. Step by step phase. Okay. Good. So if everything is clear, the next thing that we'll try to understand is agile methodology. Okay, and once we understand the agile methodology, we will try to compare the difference between waterfall and agile, and we will try to see which phase, or sorry, which methodology is best suited in the current day industry, which means like the software industry I'm talking about. And we'll try to see what are the pros and cons of using both the methodologies. Okay, so since waterfall methodology is clear, let's start with the agile methodology. So since don't look at the diagram like agile methodology, and don't look like don't think that it's way too complicated. it's also like most easiest thing that you can understand, like same as the case with waterfall. Okay, let's just start with agile methodology. So in agile methodology, we will try to understand a specific flavor in it. So a simple example is, let's assume that you go to an ice cream shop or a chocolate shop. So once you go to an ice cream shop, you might find different flavors of ice cream out there, like a butterscotch, vanilla, strawberry, pineapple, like that. There are different flavors, right? Out of which you can choose one of them, whichever one you like. Okay. The same is the case in agile methodology. There are different uh, what I can say is like flavors which are available, and the one which we will be looking into in today's class will is called as Scrum. Okay, Scrum is one of the ways where agile methodology can be implemented. Okay, so under agile methodology means we try to do means something. Yeah, we'll So in the Scrum, we will be looking into some, yeah, I'll explain what is Agile methodology and all. So Agile, maybe you can think of it as dynamic, okay, more dynamic, or means, let me just complete the methodology completely. So once I complete the Agile methodology, you will get an understanding of what is meant by Agile methodology and why we call it as Agile, okay. So in Agile, we will be looking into Scrum. There are other things like Kanban, XP. Kanban is one of the flavor and XP is one of the flavor in Agile. Okay, let's start understanding Scrum. So under Scrum, we will try to see what are the different phases in developing an application. So now, like the above example, what we saw, let's try to understand Agile also with a similar kind of example. Let us assume that now the Chase Bank, again it's Jan 2015, I'm saying on Jan 2015, Chase Bank goes to company Y and says that, hey company Y, I need a software where people can access their accounts, which means like a basic online banking application for Chase Bank is what is required. That is the requirement from Chase Bank to company Y. So now the company Y says that, okay, to develop your application, I need 12 months. Again, it says, okay, let us assume that both are 12 months so that we can understand the specific differences between both of them. Okay, let us assume company Y also says that I need 12 months of time to develop the application for online banking. Okay, well and good. Chase says well and good. Now, the next scenario. Do you have the requirements, design, development, testing, deployment, maintenance phases in Scrum also? The answer is yes, but with a slight tweak or a twist. So what is that? We'll try to understand. Before I again explain Agile, let's come here and understand a little bit more on the waterfall methodology. In the waterfall methodology, when I say the requirements phase, let us assume that the requirements phase, to gather all the requirements, I we take like at least like 1 month, one complete month I take to gather all my requirements. And let us say the design for designing the application and choosing all the softwares, everything, and creating a proof of concept or a sample application for those with that architecture and all. Let us assume that it takes 1 more month. Okay, whatever I'm giving is just some rough estimates. And let us assume that for development and for testing combinedly for both the phases, let us assume that it takes somewhere around 8 months or 9 months or 10 months or whatever. So it takes 9 months. So it means 9, 10, 11, and means combinedly testing and QA takes 9 months. And in the deployment, before deployment, let us assume that there is a verification phase again and everything goes good and all. and in the deployment phase everything happens, and this will take 1 month for creating. There are different instructions that needs to be created, like a run books and all. So for doing all those things for the deployment team, let us assume that it takes 1 month, which means that this is the split of the timings how it takes place in waterfall methodology. Now let's understand the same thing in agile. So now in agile, the first and the foremost thing that we do is again the requirements phase we do. But in the requirements phase, okay, instead of the business analyst, understand the technical terms, Tim. Why? Because in an interview perspective, people will ask you like, hey, what are the methodologies that you use? If you say like agile and waterfall, when they ask some questions or when they ask you how you have done these things, they expect you to use. It's not that expect you to use, but if you are familiar with these methodologies, like agile or waterfall, you definitely will use these kind of terminologies like business analyst or a developer or an architect or HLD, DLD, all these kind of things, right? So same is the case with agile also, similar to a business analyst. Okay, similar to a business analyst, in agile methodology, you will have something called as product owner. Okay, see, the product owner does the same thing what a business analyst does, but a slightly different work. But at this point, the understanding can be like the product owner in Agile is a kind of similar person like the one, like the business analyst under Waterfall. Okay, so now the product owner, what exactly he does is he gathers all the requirements. Okay, when I say gathers all the requirements, not not all the requirements in detail again. So when I say not all the requirements in detail, let's understand the agile at a high level before I explain all the concepts. Okay, so the advantage of using agile is, let us assume that there are something like 100 functionalities that needs to be developed in this 12 months. 100 functionalities needs to be developed, like a login, registration, logout, like that 100 functionalities. Now in agile, what we do is we try to break the development phase, means all these phases whatever we see here in waterfall are broken down into smaller pieces. Okay, so when I say broken down into smaller pieces, what exactly company Y tells is, hey Chase, I will develop the application in 12 months. But what I do is, you need not wait till Jan 2016 for your product to be used by the end customer. Rather than displaying the or making it public on Jan 2016 or Feb 2016, what I do is I try to break the functionalities into smaller pieces. Again, whatever numbers I give is just for your understanding. So the company Y says that let me develop the application in phases. When I say phases, the first phase will contain some 25 functionalities. Phase 2 will contain 25 functionalities. Phase 3 will contain 25 functionalities. And phase 4 will contain the rest of the 25 functionalities. So the first phase will be completed in 4 months. Okay. So if I start the project in Jan 2015, by May 1st, the first phase will be completed and deployed, and May 1st, 2015. And the end user, like the public, can log into Chase Bank account or online application on May 1st itself. Okay, but understand the concept here. Out of the 100 functionalities, I'm only giving 25, which means I will give some basic functionalities like login functionality, registration functionality, and then user, once he logs in, he can view his basic balance and his transactions. That is the application which will be developed in the first 4 months. In the next 4 months, so it starts from May 1st. Okay. Okay. By August 1st, what happens is the next 25 functionalities will be deployed. So when I say the next 25 functionalities, in the second phase, I will launch like the user can cancel their transactions, or the user can do a funds transfer, or the user can do bill pay. Okay, like that, the 25 functionalities. And the next phase, I will give one more, and the final phase, I will give the rest of the functionalities, which means by the time the entire product is launched into the market, it will be still Jan 2016 itself. Okay, or Feb 2016. By this time itself, by the same time, Chase Bank will also get its complete project. But what happens in this scenario is, by Jan 2016, Bank of America will not even have one single online customer, but Chase Bank will have a lot of customers. Why? Because the Chase Bank has opened its online application or online portal on May 1st, 2015 itself, at least with some basic functionalities, which help them to attain a larger base of clients, right? So obviously, if you want to open an account somewhere in between in 2015, you would definitely go with a Chase Bank saying that, hey, since Chase has an online account and all, we get a lot of features in it. Why don't we, instead of going to Bank of America, let's go to Chase and open an account. That's what everyone feels. Why? Because they are offering a lot of features like an online features, which Bank of America does not have till Jan 2016. So obviously the customers will be preferring this one. So how is this possible? This is possible because of agile methodology, where in the agile methodology, I'm trying to break all my features, or all the set of features, into smaller chunks, and I'm trying to deploy or release the project in smaller phases so that the end client or the customer can use it. That is a high level understanding of agile, but we will see in detail now like how exactly agile works or what are the steps that we follow. But is everyone clear with the high level understanding of agile methodology? Okay, that's good, team. So now going ahead with uh, the actual implementation of agile. So I would like to show it in a diagram, a pictorial manner, which is already present here under agile framework, this one. So let's start understand these things one by one. This is like what I can say is like each and every functionality that I'm going to explain here has um, a technical name. So understand the technical name so that you can re-explain this to anyone when they ask some questions. Okay. So the first phase. In the first phase, the product owner gets all the requirements. Okay. Once the product owner gets all the requirements, then the product owner uses a software called Rally. Okay. Rally. Rally is an online application, like you know, right, like a Gmail or Yahoo Mail or Facebook or whatever like that. Rally is one more software out there, which is an online application where the product owners, or in general people who are using agile methodology, use Rally for tracking all their tasks. Okay. So the product owner uses a software called Rally, and in Rally, the product owner tries to note down all the 25 functionalities. So let's try to understand this diagram with our basic understanding, like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So in phase 1, we do have 25 functionalities which needs to be developed, right? So all those 25 functionalities will be written or will be means basically in agile you call it as a user story. Okay, user story is something like a requirement you can think of. Like, let us assume that you need a login page with a banner on the top with some dimensions and a logo of Chase Bank. So that you can create it as a user story. Then you need to create a box or a location where people can enter their username and password and click on submit button. That is one user story. So user stories are nothing but the requirements that you need to develop for the application. So when using the rally, the product owner writes down all the requirements in the form of user stories. So in a user story, you will have a requirement. Now the next thing, what is that we understood here? There are 25 functionalities that needs to be developed. And what is the time frame that you have? You have 4 months of time frame. So for every 4 months, you do a deployment, right? So if you have 4 months time, I'm just giving again an example. So you can say that for every month, I will try to complete 4 functionalities. Okay. So for every 1 month, I will complete 4 functionalities, or in general 4 or 5 functionalities like that. Now, the next thing that you need to understand here is a sprint. Okay. So what is the first thing? The product owner notes down or enters all the requirements in a Rally software under user stories. So each user story defines a requirement. Now, there is something called as a sprint, and in general the sprint can go for 1 to 4 weeks. Again, sprint is nothing but shorter duration of work team. Okay, shorter duration of work. So in general, in real time, the sprint will be for 2 weeks. Means if you take 100 companies, out of this 100, like 90% of the companies use 2 week sprint. Okay, we will understand what is that sprint. But 2 week sprint is what is generally used. But sometimes people use 1 week sprint or 3 week or 4 week sprint. Okay, so what exactly is done in this 2 week sprint? Okay, so before I say that answer, out of in this 4 months, how many sprints will be there? Everyone, what is the answer? Good, Adik. Okay, it would be like 8 sprints. Why? Because since each sprint is for 2 weeks, it means that for every month there will be 2 sprints, and for every 4 months there will be 8 sprints. Okay, so first of all, everyone is clear with the number of sprints that we have. Now, as I said, sprint is nothing but shorter duration of work where you try to achieve different functionalities. The first thing, in a sprint, I'm trying to explain the sprint at a high level. Understand this. If you don't understand, stop me. Okay. So in a sprint, what happens is, let us assume that there is a team of 5 developers and 5 testers. Okay, 5 developers and 5 testers. Now, in a sprint, if it is for 2 weeks, generally sprint starts, it can start on any day, but let us assume that the sprint starts on every Monday. Okay, every alternate Monday. So on Jan 1st, let us assume if it is a Monday, when the sprint starts, on the first day of the sprint, all the team members get together and will decide or discuss what are the functionalities that needs to be prepared or developed in the first sprint. Okay, to understand it more, you can think of this in this way. Like when I'm starting my application, I don't think of how the users will maintain transactions, or I will not think of designing a page where the users can maintain transactions. Rather, I will try to decide how exactly the home page should look like, how exactly the login page should look like, what are the features in a login page, what are the features in a registration page, right? So in the first sprint, I will take those user stories or those requirements which has lesser dependencies. Okay, so let us say that once you log into the application, you go to your uh, home page where you have all the transactions listed. So if you want to go to that page, you need to have a login page ready, a registration page ready, a database ready, some set of code which needs to be ready, right? So you will not directly jump into that requirement. First, you will take the requirements which has lesser dependencies on others. So when I say lesser dependencies, and a simple example I can say is, let's take a registration flow and a login flow in the first sprint. So 5 developers will pick user stories. Sometimes each user story will have certain numbers associated with it. So like Fibonacci series like 1, 3, 5, 7, 13, 20, 40, 100, infinity, like that some numbers will be defined. So all these numbers will be defined based on the capacity and based on the complexity of the user story, which means like these things you will get or you will understand in real time. So let us assume that whatever requirement is there, or from now onwards I will not call it as a requirement, rather I will call it as a user story. So whatever user story is there, if you think that the user story can be completed in just 2 weeks, then in general people based on their capacity they mark it as a 8 pointer or a 5 pointer. If it is a bigger user story and if it cannot be done in 2 weeks, then they will break the functionality into two pieces. Like, let us assume that a user story says that create a login flow for the user so that once the user logs in, or maybe let's take a registration flow. Create a registration flow for the user where once the user tries to register, the data needs to be stored in the database. If suppose that is the requirement, and if the team decides that, hey, this flow cannot be completed in 2 weeks, then the user story will be split into two parts. Like the first part will be like designing the user interface and designing the database. And the second phase would be like writing the code in the application so that on once you click a submit button on the registration page, it calls the actual application and the code goes and stores the data like the user details in the database. Like that, the stories will be split into two. So all these things will be decided in the first day of the sprint. So during the first day of the sprint, the developers and the testers will take tasks. So the developer takes a task like creating CSS like a style sheets, or someone will take work of creating a user interface. Someone will take work of creating an application, the backend code, like that. People will take the user stories, and the quality analyst team, what exactly they do is they will say that, okay, the quality analyst team, one of the members will say that, okay, let me test the login flow. Then they will take that user story and they will write some test cases. So when I say write some test cases, or else maybe let me put it this way: on the first day of the sprint, the developers and the quality analysts will decide what are the user stories that needs to be worked on in this current sprint, or what are the user stories that needs to be completed in this current sprint. That is what is decided. And also if there is any design that needs to be done, like, hey, how exactly the page should look like, or where exactly the fields which are present in this application should look like. So if there is some requirement or some decision needs to be taken, all those things are done on the first day of the sprint. Okay, first day of the sprint. So Can you hear me, team? Yeah. I'm sorry. I guess like in between there was network problem. I guess like my audio got disconnected. Okay. So Adit, you have a question?
Yeah, so like I'm kind of lost. I did answer 8. That's because you told us it was twice a month. But anyway, so product owner creates this product backlog, and then the next thing is like what you said.
Yeah. Uh, can I put it in simple terms? Some simple terms.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So understand in simple terms, then you can correlate in technical terms. In simple terms, the product owner tells the team that hey, develop these 25 functionalities. Then the team decides, the team asks how much time we have. Then the product owner says that you got 4 months of time. Then the team decides, okay, in these 4 months, I need to complete 25 functionalities. So instead of functionalities, let me call them as user stories. And don't assume that if you have 25 functionalities, there will be only 25 user stories. There can be more user stories. As I said, if it is a complicated functionality, the user stories will be multiple user stories will be present. So in this 4 months, there are certain number of user stories which needs to be developed. So on the first day of this sprint, the team will take each, if there are 5 team members, all the 5 team members will take 5 user stories to complete. So on the first day, people will decide what are the user stories to be developed and what are the design or what are the basic design steps that needs to be followed is what is done on the first day of the sprint. Is this clear till this point to everyone?
So question.
Go
So
ahead.
so question. So unlike in waterfall where the BA actually does all the initial work, over
Mhm.
here it's like everybody starts together before like a product owner does anything, or
No, the thing here is the product owner creates the user stories like the business analyst in the previous scenario gathers all the requirements. But after the business analyst, there are architects, right? The same is the case here also. Even in this agile methodology, once the
okay,
user stories are defined in a team, when I say a team, it can be developers, architects, and all. Again, they will try to take the functionalities and they will try to decide what are the frameworks, environments, everything needs to be created and everything needs to be developed. That's what is decided. So the product owner,
okay. I guess
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Sorry. No. I guess my question is like so there's no like time frame such as like a month or whatever this product owner is gonna take, right? So he can take like a week and then just decide like everybody should meet up together.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so it's basically like or else maybe the main thing that you can understand here, you need to understand here is the BA takes the entire 1 month to get all the 100 functionalities, right? But in this current scenario, the product owner, once he gets a high level understanding and once he gets the 25 functionalities, then we are set to start. Okay, which means that don't just assume that just understanding the 25 functionalities will do. We will have a high level understanding of all the 100 functionalities, but at a detailed level only 25 functionalities will be handled in the first phase. Okay, so on the first day of the sprint we take the user stories. From the second day onwards, the development team will start working on the user stories and the quality analyst team will start writing the test cases. Okay, now in this scenario, the means each and every developer starts developing the application and the quality analyst team will be waiting for the developers to release the code. And on a daily basis, let's assume that the first day of the sprint you understood. From the second day onwards, okay, there will be a meeting for every 50 on every day for 15 minutes. Okay, in general it will be for 15 minutes. It is called as daily scrum meeting or stand up meeting, where everyone in the team will go to a room or a place where they stand up and talk. So in general, they are called as stand-up meetings. In the stand-up meeting, people will discuss like what exactly you have done yesterday, what exactly you are going to do today, and are there any roadblocks which is preventing you to do your work. These are the three things which will be discussed. So you will be saying that okay, yesterday we had a design phase, and today I will be working on a registration page, creating some UI stuff and all those things. This is what you will tell. So like this, basically the stand up or the scrum meeting will tell all the updates, will get all the updates from all the team members, and there will be scrum master who will be managing all these meetings. So the scrum master, if let us assume that in a meeting, if developer 2 says that hey, whatever requirements that I took yesterday were slightly ambiguous, I need more understanding on these things, then the scrum master will coordinate with the developer 2 and will see how he can get more requirements or more understanding towards that specific user stories. Like that, the scrum master is the one which who acts as a bridge between the developers or the QA or anyone in the team, and we'll try to see that the team gets all the basic requirements and everything so that they can start working on it. Okay, so to put everything in short, the first day will be the planning, and from the second day onwards it will be development phase and daily scrum meetings for 15 minutes, which means what exactly you've done yesterday, what exactly you're going to do today, and are there any roadblocks. Those are the three things which will be discussed. So since it is a 2 week sprint, the developers will be taking 5 or 6 days to develop the code and will push it to the quality analyst team. Then after 5 days, the quality analyst team will start testing the application which is given by the development team. Now, once the team gets all the updates, okay, the quality analyst team says that hey, there are certain bugs. The code will be sorry, the developer will again take the code, fix the bug, and again will push it or will again release it, which means that the QA again tests it. If everything is good, like that, within the 2 weeks, okay, the quality analyst team and the developers team will make sure that whatever user stories they have picked up will be completed. And on the last day of the sprint, okay, 2 week sprint, right? On the last day of the sprint, the product owner will review. Oh, am I lost again? I hope it should be clear again. Let me start from here. Like what happens on the last day of the sprint? Okay, so on the last day of the sprint, the product owner tries to take all the stories which are completed. Okay, let us assume that the quality analyst team says that we got 5 stories, we have tested all the 5 stories, and all the 5 stories are working fine. Then the product owner cross checks all the 5 user stories, and if everything is good, the product owner accepts it. When I say product owner accepting, it is nothing but the product owner also verifying and saying that everything is good as per the requirement. So once the user stories are accepted on the last day of the sprint, okay, what happens is whatever work you have finished, the finished work will be demoed, or you will give a demo to the end client, which means that you will call the the Chase Bank people and say that hey, this is what we have achieved in 2 week sprint, like the registration page and the UI and some basic stuff, whatever you have completed, you will give a demo to the Chase Bank. So once the client at Chase Bank, if he says that okay, everything is good, is perfect, then it is good. But if he says that hey, in this current scenario, I did not like the design of the login page. Why don't you make the characters a little bit more bold, or change the location of the input username text box from right to left, like that? The Chase Bank client can give feedback. So once he gives a feedback, again the feedback is one more requirement, and it is added as a new user story. And in the next sprint, which is going to happen for the next 2 weeks, in that next sprint, you will take that user story or the feedback, whatever the client has given, and you will work on it. And again, on the last day, there will be one more meeting called as retrospective meeting. The retrospective meeting is basically like all the team members come together and will discuss and decide like what went well in current sprint and what did not go well. Like you can say like, hey, the team coordination is very good and team is cooperative, or the product owner is very much cooperative. Like that, you can tell your feedback. Or if something is not good, you can say like the team the coordination is not good, or whatever requirements that we got from the product owner needs to be more refined, or we need more understanding towards the user stories. Like that, you can give any feedback which will improve the performance of the team, or which will help in improving your performance in the next coming sprints. So this is what happens in agile. So explaining this in one single shot at very high level, the product owner brings the requirements. The team, based on the sprint, will take certain user stories, will complete the user stories in that sprint and give it to the quality analyst team. The quality analyst team tests it and will give it back to the product owner. The product owner verifies the development work and will say that everything is good, and whatever work is completed is given a demo. A demo is given to the end client, and a retrospective meeting will happen on the last day. And on a daily basis, for every 15 minutes, we will have a scrum meeting or a stand-up meeting where it says like what exactly you have learned, sorry, what exactly you did yesterday, what are you going to do today, and what will you accomplish, or any roadblocks. Okay, so this is a high level understanding of agile. And yeah, basically, before I explain the next concept in this scenario, any doubts or any questions? Okay, that's good. So now let's try to compare both agile and waterfall methodologies. Okay, so the first question to everyone, or maybe let me explain this and then let me ask questions. In the first phase where you are using waterfall methodology, the Bank of America client, okay, if you are following waterfall methodology, the Bank of America client will never know what exactly is being developed in waterfall methodology until it is being deployed. Okay, so the Bank of America comes to know only about their application or how it looks like only at the end, or only after 12 months. And let us assume that after 12 months, the Bank of America did not like the way you designed, or did not like some of the functionalities that you added, or did not like the font or whatever. It means that you cannot change anything at that point. All you need to do is you need to go to a maintenance phase and then only make all the changes which Bank of America says that which it did not like. Okay, but if you are following a agile methodology, if you understand the concept, the end client, which is nothing but the Chase Bank, they we give a demo to the end client for every 2 weeks based on what exactly is the work that we are doing. And if the Chase Bank says that if it likes it, well and good. If it says that it did not like, and there are some certain things which needs to be reviewed, then you go ahead and make those changes in the next sprint, and again demo it to the end client after 2 weeks, which means the Chase Bank knows what exactly is being developed. Now, based on this understanding, can someone tell me which one is better or preferable, waterfall or agile? Okay, good. So it's agile, but there is one more thing that you need to understand. Agile suits best for current day software industry. That's well and good. but it does not suit good for every industry out there. Okay, so why we are preferring agile in this methodology or in this software development life cycle is, since the requirements are agile or dynamic, keep on changing. The client says that, hey, I did not like this, I did not like that, or if you are given this functionality, why don't you add one more new functionality? Which means that clients, since they are paying a lot of money, they want to know what is being developed and they want to get maximum out of it. So the client tries to give a lot of dynamic requirements. And let us assume that let us assume that today the tablets are not famous, or the phones are not so famous. But after 6 months, when people start using more of an iPhone or Android phones or Galaxy phones, when the companies might think, okay, let's move to Android, or let's move to the apps like an iOS apps, Android apps, so that people can access their applications on phones also. Like that, the requirements change dynamically in nowadays in the current software industry, right? So Bank of America says that, okay, Chase has given an application where people, they can track all the transactions via mobile. Then Bank of America says that they want the feature which Chase has also implemented. Like that, everyone will have a competition over their competitors, and they want to give more and more benefits to the end users. So they keep on bringing in the requirements, right? So that is the reason why agile is most suited for software development life cycle. But if you take some other industries, like let us assume that there is a company called Boeing, which is trying to create, or which is trying to develop certain aeroplane like Boeing carrier. So once it is trying to build some Dreamliners or some carriers, it cannot change its requirements dynamically. So let us assume that for building a big Dreamliner, it might take an year. So after building the body or whatever for 6 months, the company cannot say that, hey, let me increase the capacity for to 50 more passengers, or let me increase the width of the seats or distance between the seats, or let me change the electric circuit boards inside the body. They cannot do these things in an agile manner when they are doing or building a huge aircraft. The same thing like when NASA wants to send some space shuttle onto moon. They need to know what are the geographical topology on the moon, and they need to know different things before they try to build a space shuttle. They cannot say that, okay, let's build a shuttle, and after 6 months they come back and say that, oh, the gravity is 1/6 of what is present on the earth, so we need to use a different material to build this ship. So let's scrap the entire space shuttle and build a new space shuttle. That cannot happen in those industries. If those industries, all the requirements must be picture perfect before they start development, right? So waterfall methodology suits in some of the industries the most, rather than the current software development life cycle. So don't think that in each and every industry out there, agile methodology is only useful, right? It basically depends on what is the industry that you are following, or what are the risks that are involved in adding agile features. See, I don't say that NASA will never change the requirements. They might change the requirements slightly here and there, but it's not like a lot of changes which will be made, right? So waterfall methodology suits better for NASA or Boeing or in those kind of industries, but not for software in the current software development world. Is that clear to everyone? Okay, very good. And also one more drawback is, like, as you all know, Bank of America will not know how exactly the software is shaping up till the end of 12 months, or till the deployment phase. They will not know. But in agile methodology, the client knows each and everything, like how it is being developed. And the next thing is, the Bank of America, even after investing a lot of money, they need to wait for 12 months to get their entire project. But in agile, the Chase Bank just needs to wait for 4 months to start their online portal, so that at least it can give some basic functionalities to the end client, if not the entire functionalities. Okay, So even agile suits more in this current scenario. So these are the basic things that we understand at an SDLC software development lifecycle model. So any questions in this methodologies?
Yeah, Raghu, I
Yeah,
got a
go ahead.
quick one.
Mhm.
So when you say like 2 weeks, is that like literally 2 weeks or is just a guesstimation?
Okay. So whatever I told the numbers here, like at 12 months, 1 month, 9 months, these are all like the 12 months here or 4 months. These are all some very rough estimates, or these things might change. But whatever I said here as 2 weeks, okay, is exactly the same thing like companies follow 2 week sprint. Okay. As I said, like out of 100 companies, 90 companies or 99% of the companies follow 2 week sprint. That's exactly the same number that I say, 2 weeks. Or it might vary from 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 4 weeks based on companies. But 2 weeks is what they usually do. Okay. Okay. So that's a good question again, Adit. So you said that it might be tough for the developers. The answer is no. So why no is, since it is a 2 week sprint, okay, it means that the developers will get, in general, the developers will get 6 working days to develop their project, so that the rest of the time can be allotted for the quality analyst team to test it, and the developers can support them. Okay. So if it is like a six days of work, okay, in general 2 weeks means 10 days of work is what we do, 5 days and 5 days in each week. And if it is 6 days allocated for a developer, in the 6 days, in general, if you're working on an average for 6 hours a day, which means 36 hours is what they estimate, saying that, okay, what is the task that can be accomplished in this 36 hours? If you understand the concept, in the previous scenario, we understood that in Agile, if I have a registration page where I need to add some registration details, save it into the database, if that cannot be done in 36 hours, I will break down the task into smaller pieces. First piece, okay, let me create an UI, user interface, where I create all the text boxes. I do a client side validations like a JavaScript validations and all, whatever, for in the first 2 week 2 weeks. In the next 2 weeks, I will create an application on the back end so that it can get the data from the front end and store the data into the database. That is what I do in the next two weeks, which means I'm trying to break down the task into smaller pieces, and I'm trying to achieve smaller tasks at shorter spans. Okay, clear? Okay. So that's all. That's the basic thing that I would like to explain in today's class. So if there are no questions, let me stop the recording.